Transportation, be it in Nigeria, be it globally, remains as important as you and I waking up and looking for our means of livelihood. Yes, we must move out and get something done. There has to be some form of mobility, be it with the keke, Okada, moto, and a lot of us may not know this. The boats, the ferries, the waterways are playing very top priority when it comes to movement, which is why we're looking at the issues around it. Why are there no proper regulations? Or maybe there are proper regulations, but enforcement becomes issues. Why are people insisting on doing the wrong things on the road? Who regulates what? Today we're paying a lot of attention on the waterways, and a lot of stories will be coming in from Lagos and Port Harcourt and some other parts of the country where the water transportation is greatly used. I don't know, have you ever tried, Shiki? Have you ever used water to travel?
No, never.
Are you scared of water?
Yeah, I'm actually scared of water, and anyway, I've never tried it. I've not had a reason to try it.
I know Francis put something together.
Yeah, we'll be, just as you said, we'll do more on waterways. But before then, we'll be talking about regulation and who licenses public transportation, and that is the operators. Now let's join Francis Ogbe, who will give us the lead on this. He'll be our guide.
The basic necessities of life, namely food, clothes, and shelter, are impossible to be achieved in any society without transportation. And without transportation, life as it is today will be inconceivable. Ideally, every local government should have its own transportation system. But what is the situation today? Who is regulating the public transport sector?
A local government has the right to operate a transport system and regulate it by itself. The state also has the right to operate a transport system and regulate it by itself. And then the federal, for now, is the only one regulating here. You remember we used to have in Abuja what we call BRT. BRT was initiated in Lagos, and the regulator of BRT in Lagos is Lamata. So, and in fact, Lagos is a model actually, although it's not the best, but Lagos is a model because the regulation in Lagos is still a little better. But it needs to be done to the point that all those buses that are one-chance buses that are carrying people away do no longer happen. So that's a weak link in the Lagos aspect. So Abuja tried to catch up, to do what is called BRT, Bus Rapid, Transit. In any city like Abuja, actually, you don't see small vehicles like this carrying people up and down. And in London, even when you are going to have small vehicles like this, you have the black cab. You have the black cab. The black cab has regulators that regulate it. They know the name of the driver. They know the name of the vehicle. They know the brand of the vehicle. They know the number of the vehicle. They have the details of the driver. So if the driver commits an infraction, if the driver is seen immediately, there's camera all over the place. You see, the hallmark of regulation is registration. When you want to regulate something and you are not registering the operators, that's where the problem came from. All these Kabu operators in Abuja, who registered them? Nobody registered them. If you are just like you're going home now, just feel that, look, Francis is broke today. How do I make money? You convert your vehicle to a taxi, and then you're free to do it. And then when you see that you make money today, so you keep doing it every day.
A few states in Nigeria are moving towards smart technology initiatives to drive efficiency in economic activities, manage data, and secure residents. Within cities, ride-hailing platforms like Uber and Bolt tap the democratic nature of the internet to provide cab services and regulate service delivery to their own standards digitally.
Of course, you knew how Uber started. Some two or three boys wanted to go to party. You understand me? And so they went for club in the night. They were coming back. They didn't see any taxi that would carry them. And then they said, wait a minute. At this hour, why do taxi work and stop at a particular time? They should be able to work 24 hours. And they came together and established this. And once they saw that the system is working, it's app-based. So they made sure that they have a franchise manager in any country. There's a franchise manager in Nigeria. The one in charge of Nigeria now also established franchise managers for Abuja, for Port Harcourt, for Lagos. This is where, organization comes from. So if you want to join that system, you must look for the office of the franchise manager for your town. And then when you get there, they also have, registered mechanics that will certify that your vehicle is worthy. When a system is run in the private sector way, that's what you have. But when you run a system in a bureaucratic way, what you have is what you see all around. Commotion, people being kidnapped, through one-chance vehicles, and so on and so forth, and lack of organization anywhere.
While yellow and black are widely accepted as the colors of cabs all over the world, it isn't the same in Nigeria. Most states have distinct uniform colors to signify cabs or drops, as they are fondly called. The signature yellow and black have become synonymous with Lagos, while Abuja uses the national colors of green and white.
In New York, it's yellow taxi. That's identity. But in a state like Dallas, Texas, no taxi. You have to drive your car. If you cannot drive your car, you do BRT. And the BRT has identity. And then they have their metro, their train system. It has identity. So Lagos has succeeded with the identity of yellow bus. For example, we can say, okay, in Abuja, what's our national color? Or what's our color code? And then we can now say, okay, this color code, we are going to have 4 color code. And we are going to break, Abuja is cadastral zone. So cadastral zone 1, this is the color. Cadastral zone 2, this is the color. Cadastral zone 3, this is the color. It promotes safety, it promotes orderliness, it gives identity. So these are the advantages of following those kind of systems.
Motorcycle operators, popularly known as Okada riders, have become nuisance on many roads in Nigeria. The Okada business has become an all-comers affair, as criminal-minded persons are using them for their nefarious activities. Consequently, the federal government is considering a ban on the use of commercial motorcycles.
We have seen that Okada became a means of transportation commercially, and no one is in charge of regulating them. So they have no number plate, they have no license plate, and the driver the rider does not have a license. So a lot of people were killed. Go to hospital, you see people whose legs have been maimed. So the noise made people to say, okay, let's ban Okada inside the city. Let Okada only be in the outskirts. Then these guys that are riding Okada inside the city, which work would they do? Keke came in as another means of empowerment. So they began to ride Keke, not licensed, not trained, the same attitude. And that's why you see that the same way Okada people used to behave, the same way Keke people behave.
Government obligation to safeguard public safety and welfare can only be executed through regulation in the road transport industry. Therefore, our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on licensing the public transport sector.
Yeah, Francis Ogbede setting the tone for our discussion today, that is licensing and regulation of public transport sector. There is something I just want to point out. That public transport sector is actually a subsector of the economy, and its efficiency and effectiveness adds up to the economy. So that is why regulation is really important, and that is why this discourse is really important. Yes. So Lizzie,
I was watching that and listening, with intense, understanding. And the last bit the man said caught me. He says the Okada people, when it was banned, they moved into the tricycle, that's the keke, and the same attitude, the same this, and it simply boils down to the thing we said that taking on a new name does not change your DNA.
Definitely.
There has to be a lot of drilling
Yeah.
to be able to change your DNA and get it right, and that comes only from training and regulation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about being part of economy. It's a big deal, really. It's a big deal, which is why we all must look forward towards having a smart city.
Yeah.
When I say smart city, it's imperative that transportation it becomes a culture. Because if I have to go to work, I must not drive. I should be able to get out there, take a bus. You go to smart cities in the world, you're sitting down, and you never know it.
There
The
must
next
be
senator,
mass mobility.
exactly. The next person sitting beside you could just be a congressman.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there in the bus.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything. But tell me, I don't know, how many of our senators in Nigeria can, jump into BRT? I need to know. But then, while we are asking that question, Shikiola, sitting right here with me, you actually took a job of that. Let's see what you did.
I was in the field earlier.
The way it is structured by the regulations that we have is that nobody is supposed to just bring vehicle into the road for the purpose of hire and reward without belonging to what we refer to as a licensed operator. A licensed operator, like operator's license, is the authority that is given to an entity or an individual to operate fleet of vehicle for the purpose of hire and reward in FCT. And so everybody that wants to operate will now have to go under a particular licensed operator for them to be able to operate. This license is given by the Secretary Transportation of the FCT. We now, as the Directorate of Road Traffic Service of the FCT, we regulate and enforce that aspect of regulation.
Any taxi that you see green, white, green, and blue on top of the road, that is under National Union of Road Transport Workers. The one that you see, just take by the side, you will see the number. You can take the number. So if there is anything that happen, just contact any of the union office that this is the number you enter. We will not bring it out. We have their everything, their list and their picture, everything. All our town service within the town. Every vehicle that loaded here, it has manifest. We are not praying for anything. Whatever anything, they must, let's say something happened, maybe they got an accident, it involved life, or maybe it's fracture or whatever. With that manifest, we will trace that person family. And our union that is on certain money that they are been assisting that fellow that anything that happen. Even the vehicle that you pay, if you pay 1,000 naira, 500 naira, let's say 50 naira or 100 naira go to that manifest. So if you not happen to you, happen to Mr. A, or you happen to Mr. Ibrahim or Mr. John, from that money that we are keeping, that is the money our headquarters will now send for those families to come and assist them. which is something that if you boarded a vehicle or by this motor association or illegal motor park, you can't see that kind of thing. That is the advantage of entering vehicle in the park.
What we want to do is we certify a vehicle. If it is okay, it enters into the database. So now, at the level of the operators, they can now match a vehicle that is available to do business and a driver that is available to do business. And there is a tool that we're going to use. There's going to be a large side numbering. Yes, large side numbering that as an individual, you can pick up your phone. And if you have a smartphone, we have an app, Abuja Inspector, you can verify.
Okay, so now you pick a bit of that. If we must develop the way we desire, if we must have all the necessities it is to, work and earn a living, mobility can never be underrated at this point. We have a guest in Lagos, and he is one personality that will be speaking a whole lot. I think he will stay with us for a very long time today. He is the fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transportation and Nigerian Institute of Management. He's also the former international vice president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and he is the Magayaki of Zazu Emirates. His name is Malam Ibrahim Jibril. Nice to have you with us, sir. I would like to ask you a question pointedly. With all that you have been able to accomplish, you're well vested and exposed to transportation. Do you think, sometimes we talk, people think we're making noise. Do you think that we in Nigeria, we've gotten it right with transportation?
Transportation is the live wire of any economy. And by all standards, it has been shown that transportation contributes about 12% to the global GDP. So you can imagine how weighty the contribution of transportation is to the global economy. And having said that, we definitely have put some regulations in place, but there is a lot to be done. For example, as good news, we recently have heard that the National Transportation Policy is before the presidency for approval. But this is an instrument that we have been drafting and redrafting for over 3 decades now. And to be honest with you, if you do not have the National Transport Policy on the ground, which serves as the foundation for other instruments to spring up, like the laws and regulations in the area of transportation, then it will be that we're just beating around the bush. We definitely need that policy in place in order to guide the industry in the way we do things. But what do we have today? We're formulating laws, we're coming up drafting regulations, and we don't even have a national transport policy in place. But the good thing is that the jerry news is that we understand it is currently in the presidency awaiting approval. So we look forward to that, and we pray that it doesn't take as long as it has been taken in the past. We will understand that the aviation is properly regulated because it is based on a domesticated convention, and in that regard, there is so much regulation in place. And to be honest with you, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has been doing a lot with regards to technical regulation. But unfortunately, there are other services that we do not get it right, and it appears nothing is being done about it. And we will also commend the Federal Aviation Authority of Nigeria, who have been trying to put good airport facilities in place in recent times. And I think the aviation industry is a little bit better regulated than some other modes of transportation. If we go to the maritime industry, we also have regulations based on domesticated conventions, And I think NEMASA is in charge. Definitely it is in charge of regulating the maritime industry. That is with blue waters. But with the brown waters, is Nigerian National Inland Waterways Authority that is in charge. We will come to look at that also and see where we are getting it right and how we are not getting it right in these areas. Of course, the area, the mode that is almost completely unregulated is the road mode. That area, it appears we have no effective regulations in place, no proper enforcement, and compliance is certainly lacking. And that is why we're having all the chaos we're having on our roads today. Now, the licensing of motor vehicles in Nigeria is under the purview of the state government through the state licensing offices of the state governments. And what is happening now is far, far, far different from what we used to experience in the 70s. I recall late 60s and early 70s, I used to ride my bicycle for over 10 kilometers to go to primary school. And that time, you dare not ride your bicycle without a license. The license is always tied or screwed onto the spoke of the bicycle, and there is proper checks on the road. So the bicycle is licensed, the motorcycle is licensed, and the motor vehicle is licensed. But that is not what we are seeing today. Today, it appears the licensing is just an avenue of generating revenue for state governments, and that is it. We don't see any compliance, and we don't see any enforcement in that regard. As long as you register your vehicle with the license authority, and you are stopped by enforcement officers on the road, if you can show them those documents are up to date, then you are free to go. If not, what is the penalty? Nothing apart from asking you to pay the dues. If there are charges for non-compliance, you are asked to pay, and it's all about revenue. There are no consequences for failure to comply with some of these rules and regulations that we find in the road mode transport. Unfortunately, because of this utter neglect, the trade unions have virtually taken over the regulation of the road mode, particularly with commercial vehicle operation. And it is their own standards that are being followed, and it is their enforcement guidelines that drivers that are on commercial vehicles are complying with. And of course, it is not in good perspective that the proper regulators are leaving these things out. Recently, we have seen states like Lagos State and the Abuja Federal Capital Territory, and to some extent, Kano and Kaduna, coming up with outfits that are trying to enforce some of these things. But they are still going back to the days that we only check for these particulars, and that is all. We never check. In fact, to be honest with you, we have had cases, very many cases, where people carry driver's license, but they have not been tested. So, to be honest with you, we have not been able to get it right when it comes to proper regulation in this industry.
Right, thank you. I see a lot of passion as you speak. It comes from deep within. That's real good. You actually made me smile when you talked about the bicycle and riding 10 kilometers to school. That sounded a lot of fun. And then to think that you actually have to attach your license right on the wheels. That's interesting. But I know you have a question for him.
Yeah, he spoke about lack of proper regulation on road transportation, especially while the aviation sector and the maritime sector have better regulation. So what should actually be done on the part of government? You made mention of the fact that licensing and on the part of government has been reduced to mere generation of revenue. So what should we do to actually get it right from the part of government so that it is not left only in the hand of the unions, the road transport unions?
See to the approval of the national transport policy as quickly as possible, such that other activities will hinge on the policy. Agreed, we already have laws in place, but how are they being implemented? To be honest with you, like Francis mentioned earlier, to be able to manage an industry like this, you must have accurate data. Why are we licensing? Why are we registering? It's for the purpose of having a database to be able to plan, to be able to track operators and other role players, stakeholders in the industry, and to be able to be used for research purposes and to be able to have data for investment purposes. These are things that are key for us to have a sane and safe transport system in the country. Now, of course, we have the road safety, Federal Road Safety Corps, who have been doing some good job in the industry, but they have challenges. And you can see quite all right that they have not been able to do effective enforcement as it is required. There are so many practices that are unprofessional. There are so many practices that are not safe. And to be honest with you, for an organization like that, the Road Safety Corps, safety is paramount. And we still see vehicles, not even small vehicles, trucks parking on shoulders of roads, which cause a lot of accidents. Where is the enforcement arm if people are refusing to comply? I personally would love to see people complying rather than people forced to comply, because that is when you see people, like in other climes, people accepting the rule as it is and people practicing or abiding by them. And that is when you will have a sane society. But where people are refusing to comply, then you need to enforce it. And where are the enforcement arms? We have seen in the past where the VIOs, vehicle inspection officers, and in some places they are called road transport service directorates, they were in the past quite effective. And I will be honest with you, the first time I got my driver's license in 1976, I went to the head of the VIO's office in Kaduna State, and I told him my father asked me to see him so that I would be given a driver's license. He said, good, sit down. He called the VIO, asked them to go and register me, and gave me a proper test. He refused to recognize that anybody sent me to him. Meanwhile, let me be honest with you, my father didn't send me, but I wanted an avenue that I would be listened to as quickly as possible. And I was listened to, but I had to go through the test. As compared to what is happening now, how many people actually go for the test? How many people even know the road signs? How many people do we have that have gone through driving schools? Not many, but they end up with driver's licenses. There is a lot of confusion in that area, and I think we need to do more in terms of regulation. Having a database is very important, because the licensing offices are supposed to register vehicles and register their operators for the purpose of having a database. Like Francis mentioned earlier, it is easy for tracking. And that is the only way I added earlier, that you can do some planning with the figures and the numbers that you have. And I think there's a lot that we need to do in terms of enforcement in this country. Like many other sectors in the country, enforcement has been a challenge. And I think we have to focus on that more and more in order to have a saner transport and logistics community in Nigeria.
Because you've been exposing a whole lot of things for a lot of us Nigerians. I know that a lot of times people don't want to go through the hassle of sitting down to collect the prerequisites before driving. Parents actually help their children to get these things done. Now, my question is, do you think is lack of proper orientation? Do we need to go back to re-sensitize our people? I remember you mentioned 1976. Wow, when you took your driver's license test, and it wasn't for you to jump hurdles. You did the right thing. Should we take it back to the primary school, teach people, basics? I know they teach signs and symbols of the road. Do we also help them to understand that before they get the paper, they should be prepared? Someone got a driver's license in America and she actually threw a party because it's not easy to get it. But in Nigeria, it's a walkover. Do we need to reorientate the minds of our people here?
Like, for example, my institute, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, we have started taking the education of road transport to the primary schools, to the grassroots, so that children will come up with the knowledge of what transportation is and what they need to do in order to key in to the regulations that abide in the country. Now, it is very good for children to start, and that is why you see even from the nursery level and primary one, children are beginning to be taught to identify the traffic lights, the red for stop, the amber to get ready, and the green to go. Even primary school students know that. But of course, we need to take it further. We need to go further in the terms of education, which I said our institute has started taking this to the primary schools so that these children are enlightened and well informed of what these requirements are in the industry at their level, of course. And it will graduate to them knowing more as they move higher up the ladder. Now, let me be honest with you. Regulation in Nigeria has become something that is just on paper to some extent as far as the road transport is concerned. And I would wish to see a situation where more enlightenment is done, where people are beginning to be made aware. It's unfortunate that Nigerians have taken bad behavior a little too far. We need to correct that. And it's not only in the road transport, it abides in many places. And in recent times in this same studio, I've had discussions on Good Morning Nigeria where I mentioned that quacks are managing quacks. And people took offense on that. But that is the truth. That time we were discussing this carnage of tankers exploding on our roads. And that is the mere truth. We have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to training. Now we have, for example, in the inland waterways, where Lagos State government has its own laws, and the federal government has its own laws guiding the operations in the water transport, inland water transport. Now, who should be held responsible for training? Who should be held responsible for standards setting and enforcement? Lagos State has its own. Probably some other states have their own also, while the federal government has its own. So there is some problem with the issue of policy somersault, to the extent that you can see there is virtually going to be different standards for the different territories or different jurisdictions. And that we need to harmonize and come as one standard, one training or one recognized accreditation body for training institutions, and one regulatory framework for everybody in the country. And I think that will serve us better as against what we are experiencing today.
Malam Ibrahim Jibril there, quite expository, all that you have told us there. Now, let's talk about regulation of waterways. You made mention of the fact that waterways is better regulated, but we have different regulations across board. And there is need to actually raise the standard. So let's talk about, let's go to Lagos to see regulation of waterways in that state.
Aside breathing, which is one of the essential characteristics of living being, movement from one place to another also occupies strategic position in the hierarchy, thus making transportation and its modes inevitable. Lagos, a cosmopolitan city inhabiting over 15 million people with the population growing daily, groans under heavy traffic which cause loss of man-hours on the road, resulting in a cumulative negative effect on the economy. And with the state blessed with vast water bodies, water transportation therefore is not an option but a necessity.
Currently, the state government is developing its water transportation arm in such a way that it also ties into the multimodal system. So not only do you have road transportation in Lagos State, We're also developing the water transportation, and of course you know that there's a lot of ongoing works in the rail transportation to see how that takes off towards the end of this year, stroke early next year. So the potentials for Lagos State are actually enormous, and the state government is investing in terms of creating the enabling environment by ensuring that the infrastructure is there, by ensuring that the safety systems are available. We're also working with the security systems as well to be able to ensure that investors and all stakeholders feel comfortable to be able to use the waterways.
There are concerns, however, about the licensing of some of the ferry operators that ply the waterways and how they carry out their activities, which call for questioning on regulations.
For any vessel to operate on Lagos inland waterways, it's typical for them to undergo some sort of registration, licensing, and of course to comply with standard operational procedures. I think all of this together is what we refer to as the regulation of activities on Lagos inland waterways. The registration is obvious. You don't acquire a vessel just like you would buy a car. You need to document it. So that documenting process is when you bring it down to the authority to register. On our own side here, we confirm that this vessel is seaworthy before it's been documented, and a seaworthiness certificate is being issued to the operator.
In time past, ferry services, though not as many as we have it today, were well structured and their operations met minimum standard. However, what we have today, with all manners of canoes and speedboats hovering the waterways, leave less to be desired against the backdrop of the unfortunate boat accident in Ojo recently.
What we refer to today as the ferry service network on the Lagos inland waterways was built on the back of these boats, and the state government is doing all it can to formalize their operations. Considering the incident that happened on the other time, it was as a result of the operator not adhering to standard operational guidelines. Naturally, the Lagos State waterways is shut to commercial operations at 7 p.m. As soon as we move out of daylight, we move into the dark, the operations are being stopped. Now, this is an operational rule that all commercial operators are supposed to adhere to. So if you look at the information from that incident, you will realize that that boat operator was sailing around 8 p.m. at night. So one, it broke the night travel rule. Two, it was operating from an illegal jetty. And three, the boat was overloaded.
For some passengers using the water transportation, the experience is a mixed feeling.
The management, they are not being effective because there should be a regulator that are managing them. We have some boats that they don't have a glasses that can cover the breeze that are coming from outside. So some boats are tattered, some boats are very, very good, but some are not enough.
A lot of people cannot be able to avoid it, but the little people that can avoid it, it makes somebody to come to work faster, to slow down the traffic. It's okay.
Interestingly, last year was probably the year where we had the least amount of accidents on our waterways, as compared to previous years. And it didn't just happen by mistake. It happened through the intentionality of the authority in taking certain measures. So one of the things that we did, we ensured that we increased our personnel presence at the jetties. We ensured that we carried out a biannual inspection of boats on the waterways. We also had a monitoring and a patrolling system, which also ensures that people are adhering to safety rules and regulations. And beyond that as well, the state government is now establishing the very first inland waterways control room, which will help us begin to monitor all of the activities on the waterways. And also, we've also just recently upgraded our emergency and rescue services so that we can respond to emergencies in the quickest time possible.
With these measures being put in place by the regulator, it is hoped that there will be less avoidable mishaps on the waterways and more Lagosians will be more confident and comfortable in using water transportation.
It's good to know that the accident rate is greatly reduced, and I believe that we'll get to a point where it's completely on the zero lists, and that's from Lagos. Port Harcourt, that's another place where the waters serve as means of transportation, of course, using the boats, canoe, and Sheki, I don't know. You say you've never, don't worry. Me and you were in the same shoes. I'm not even about to try it out because I'm kind of really scared of waters. But I'm wondering, how do people, just because you have money, you go out there, buy a canoe, buy a boat,
and just put
and
it
just
on the
roll?
water.
Okay, let's go to Port Harcourt.
Communities found in coastal areas like the Niger Delta depend on water transportation for the conveyance of people, goods, and services from one point to another. The mode of transportation is very crucial to some communities in Rivers State.
And normally we get 3 jetty. We have Bonny, we have Nembe, we have Bile. Now look where the 3 union use 1 jetty. It's not supposed to be so. Look where the place is too congested. We don't know which who. Meanwhile, formally when we get our own personal jetty, before you come into the jetty, we search you, we do it, but now we cannot leave our passengers to go and check other people. That is sin. We want the government to put more effort to do another jetty for us, so we can share.
However, this means of transportation is bedeviled by numerous challenges like sea piracy, lack of safety gadgets, proper training of boat operators, and poor supervision by government agencies.
On our side, we are still facing that problem of insecurity. Like 2 weeks ago, one of our drivers has been kidnapped by the grace of God. After 1 week, he regained his freedom, but it's not free.
There are sea pirates on river. I want government to, provide more security.
If they will provide a life jacket, it will be better.
According to experts, efforts have been made to ensure that speedboat drivers and operators are adequately trained and penalized if they fail to comply to lay down rules.
You look at our passengers before they leave, they zoom up here. We'll give them life vests to put on life vests. If they do not put on life vests, we'll not like to go. Or Fiji drivers, if you take any passenger without life vests, we are going to suspend you.
Every 3 months, they normally go training for update.
More boats should be provided, and I think more people should be trained how to drive these boats, so that we'll have enough boats that will ferry us to our destination.
Government agencies, in a bid to ensure safety on waterways, have banned night travels. Though periodic check on boats to make certain their condition is up to acceptable standard are carried out regularly, more needs to be done.
The gunboat will only see is Marine Police gunboat, the one that's from Bonny. Sometimes they will come. Because when the gunboat is seen, maybe they are on a special duty, maybe they are escorting maybe company vessel and all the rest. You see gunboat, but they are not particularly for our security, apart from the Marine Police gunboat that do come out. That Marine Police alone, they cannot secure the river because they cannot cover up a lot of spaces. So we still need much security.
And we are here to enforce all those maritime related regulations.
All stakeholders, including passengers, need to put all hands on deck to tackle the myriad of challenges facing water transportation in River State.
Okay, we just saw a bit of Port Harcourt, and I see a lot of responses up here too. Some of the questions they're directed to the Malam Jibril, okay. Ibrahim, our guest in Lagos, so we'll get to take him on all of them. But then you had your own questions for him.
Yeah. He made mention of national policy on transportation and the need to have a harmonized policy that is and quick implementation and enforcement of that policy. Mm-hmm. Now we saw Lagos. That's and from the report from Lagos shows that waterways mishap is actually reducing. While what I saw in Port Harcourt, I saw a bit of chaos, just canoes right there on the waterways. Now, this national policy on transportation, what does it cover? What is in it? And how does it address regulation of waterways and actual insurance for passengers?
Definitely.
Thank you very much. You see, the National Transport Policy is an instrument from which you bring out rules, regulations, and laws. It is not a law of its own. It is a broad framework of what the industry should entail. What is in it for who? What is in it for government? What is in it for the private sector? What is in it for individuals, in such a broad manner that we are guided in bringing out our laws and regulations. And that is basically what the policy is all about. And that is why I said it is the foundation upon which we can build all these other regulations and laws of the land. But having said that, for water transportation, you certainly need to have cargo. Without cargo, there will be no need for water transportation. And when you have cargo, definitely you need navigable waterways. That is the medium on which this cargo will be moved. But how do you move them? You need platforms. So you must have seaworthy platforms that will move the cargo. And when I say cargo, I mean both in human traffic and freight. And those are the cargo that I'm referring to. And of course, when you have navigable waterways, you have seaworthy platforms, you have terminals along the way, you are good to go. But then, what are we seeing here? You see, there has been all this argument in recent years as to the waterways belong to National Inland Waterways Authorities, or Lagos State government says, no, it belongs to them. And I don't have problem with who it belongs to. But whoever it belongs to, we must harmonize and have a unified standard for operation. But what we should do is to see that we harmonize whatever is happening in Lagos State and other states with that of the National Inland Waterways Authority. Because the citizens need the service. And if you are not there, they will do it on their own, irrespective of whether they know the standards or not. And obviously, they don't know the standards. But they are doing it because the services are required. And you can't stop them. But it behoves on government, to be honest, to try and see how these things are standardized and how they are enforced.
That because anarchy is actually the architect of doom in every society, and it's important that we ensure that we put into place policies, regulation, whatever we want to call it, especially when it comes to transportation, because
and it should be harmonized.
Exactly, it should be harmonized, really, because what happens in A, if it doesn't happen well again in B, there's always a problem. Yeah. In talking about transportation, there's this e-commerce, e-transport, smart city, like you call it, that is going on. You need to hail your ride and all of that. Before we empty what we know about it, let's go with NA and watch what is happening around that environment from her POV.
One of the modes of transportation commonly used in Nigeria is via the road. However, road transport in Nigeria is riddled with all manners of challenges, from bad roads to recklessness among drivers, drunk driving, and insecurity worries, among other problems bedeviling the Nigerian transportation sector. The most glaring is insecurity and safety of human lives while on transit.
I've not really had so much bad experience compared to this friend that I had that told me a story of how she was in an Uber, ride with the driver, and then he was just driving recklessly. That's one. Two, he was driving as if he did not know the road. He was entering some kind of strange untarred roads like that, and then because it was scary, of course, because she knows where she's going to, and guy, you're entering different road, waiting there happen. So she had to end the trip and tell him that no, I can't do this, because sometimes it could be dangerous.
With rapid growth in urbanization coupled with overpopulation in major cities, the demand for transport has exceeded the supply and capacity of road network in Nigeria. There are more vehicular movement across major cities of the country. However, the presence of different mode of transport on the road, such as buses, tricycle, taxis, and commercial motorbikes, have not met the demands of the populace. Some of the public transport operators are untrained, with rickety vehicles. It was based on this premise, among other challenges, that led to the entry of Uber into the Nigerian transportation sector. Uber started operations in 2014. It connects commuters with drivers via the internet application with strong presence in major cities of the country. However, despite the grand entry of the vehicle on ride, hailing platforms such as Uber, Bolt, and other app operators, there are complaints from commuters from sexual harassment to attempted cases of kidnapping, among other unwholesome and unprofessional behaviors from some of its drivers.
I sent a message to my sister saying, this driver is acting really funny and I don't know what's up with him, I'm scared. I came down from the car and I started trying other apps, other taxi apps, and for some reason nobody was coming. I even got connected to another Uber driver who cancelled. But this happened like literally 2 minutes after I came down from the car. So as this was happening, I was still seeing this guy texting someone in the car. So I, at this point, decided to take a picture of his plate number. Now, immediately I took a picture of his plate number and sent it to my sister. I raised up my head and saw 3 men holding axes, cutlasses, and every sharp weapon you can imagine. Apparently, they didn't come like they were looking for who to rob. And the Uber driver was there packed in his car. I was standing behind the Uber car when these men were coming. I was wearing a black dress, so there's no way they could have seen me, if not that they had received information. They came straight to me shouting, where is she? And, you know, at this point they were already in front of me. So I said, all I have on me is my phone. And I threw my phone at them because they were about to hit me with their weapon. So I threw my phone at them. They bent to pick the phone and I just started running.
I told the guy I had cash. He said, okay, fine. By the time we got there, okay, there was no change. That's how we were just dragging. He was expecting me to go and look for change. Like, waiting happened. I was busy. Okay, so what's going to happen? We're busy there looking at each other. He wasn't saying anything. I wasn't saying anything. So I got tired at the point. So I had to just, you know, go and look for the change myself.
The introduction of ride-hailing platform has no doubt eased the burden of commuters across the country. Experts in the transport sector advised that the industry should be given the required attention through a robust regulatory policy framework to streamline the operations in the industry in line with global best practices.
Much. And the more we talk about these things, the more your mind goes back. It could be happening to you, it could be happening to your relation, it could be happening to your siblings, it could be happening to your child or whoever. So it's imperative that we stand and speak on the need to protect the public system. And I think the first thing to do is to remove all those big cars from the big people. Let them follow us and do this business.
Exactly.
Yes, if you remove all their cars, they will be forced. If your driver is infected, if your driver is killed, it will still affect you. And your driver is the one who will use the mass transport.
Exactly. And he mentioned the fact that mass transit remains the sure way, the best way to actually provide the necessary mobility within cities. But in Nigeria, that is quite lacking. And what we have mostly in Nigeria nowadays is Okada. That is motorbikes. That is the sure way now for most Nigerians to move around. So let's now look at this report coming from Unyilola Alabi. Regulation of Okada.
In recent times, most state governments have come up with policies to streamline the activities of motorbike operators. And in extreme cases, some governors have placed a total ban on the operation of Okada in their states. This is as a result of the recklessness of the activities of public transport operators. Most reported cases of kidnapping and other crimes have been traced to the impunity of the motorbike operators. Motorcycle operation, popularly known as Okada, is a major source of transportation in many parts of the country. Okada riders operate on the highways, streets, and unmotorable area of our towns and cities. Countless people have fallen victims of Okada operators as they have become a nuisance to the society. Many are itching to know who regulates or licenses them to operate.
We don't have license. We just drive it well.
All Okada supposed to have license, but we don't have license. But our union, we dey buy ticket every day now. As a Okada now, we are all registered under our union.
Most criminal activities in major cities like Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja have been traced to the operators of motorbikes. Sometimes they use the motorcycles for robbery operations, snatching of bags of people walking on the streets, and even mobilize themselves to attack motorists at the slightest provocation.
Most people use it to rob and to do some kind of things, but some, they use it in order to sustain life.
Most of bad people that they enter, some of them, they are not Okada. They are just using Okada to commit some crimes.
That one no be Okada. That one are thieves now, not be Okada. Now they go be like Okada. They go come like Okada now. They go just come gather for Boston like this now. If passenger come, they will carry and go where they go. But if you see Okada carry bag, go snatch bag, that one no be Okada. Now na thief now. I gave my sisters where they for school. I dey help them. Sometimes I dey give them school fees. They pay their school fees. I dey feed myself. I dey help my families.
What you supposed to do? You put eyes in the apple. You put security anywhere now. So, as we are Nigerians, you're supposed to be wise.
Analysts are of the opinion that government at all levels should initiate and enforce policies that will provide better alternative public transportation for the people. They argued that the use of Okada as a means of transport should be discouraged, or better still, highly regulated, with stringent measures put in place, such as licensing and monitoring of the activities of motorbike operators for easy identification in case of any mishap.
And with that, we wrap up. I'd like to still remind all of us that we should drive for the safety of your loved ones who could just be in the next vehicle. And that reminds me, when we started, I started with the story of the fog, and I said that a lot of people still do the wrong things, driving against traffic, even with the very limited visibility. I don't know, Suleiman was able to capture the fog for us. I don't know if we can play it. Just look at what Abuja looks like this morning. You cannot even see your neighbor, you know, like 1 yard away. I'm not sure you can see very well. That's the fog. That's what we ran through this morning coming, and Nigerians are still driving against that traffic. Anyway, just be sensible and feel good.
Exactly.
I'll see you next time.